chump to manipulate the market, flooded from the darknet, flooded from the deep web, keep it a secret. Every exchange got the nerdy brains trading on the frequent.
Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me now. Let me know in chat if we are chipmunking, because I currently can't check right now. So I'm just good to go as the first instant reward comes up. So, hi everyone. We're gonna make this really quick. This is gonna be a nice, exciting, concise interview. I'm so excited because we have some awesome guests on tonight. I am known on the internet as Side Pocket. I'm one of the two co-founders of DEF CON 201. We are a computer hacker hangout group, a subset of DEF CON groups. For those who don't know, DEF CON is a big hacker convention and sort of organization that usually takes place once a year in Las Vegas when we don't have the plague running around. And because of that plague, again, normally we meet up third Friday of the month, but because that's going on among other bunch of issues, ever since March, we've been live streaming this show. And so that's, and we also do special shows, and this is one of my shows. I do this every second and fourth Saturday of the month, which is Crypto Barons. And if you want to find out more about us, you can go to our website at defcon201.org. I'm going to put a link right now in the chat. And we're also on all sorts of different types of social media. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on the hostux.social instance of Mastodon. We have a very popular Twitter at defcon21nj.org. But if for some reason you're too lazy to go to the website, and we're only 9 followers away from our DLive goal. But regardless, here's the link tree that puts everything there. So, what's this show? This is called Crypto Barons. I'm, used to seeing a ton of YouTube videos and stuff when people look up cryptocurrency, about blockchains and things like that. Literally blockchains, as you can see here. And, most of them are about markets. Some of them are about community. This is a show that's focused on cryptocurrencies and other related markets and blockchains as technologies, and we like to expose like snake oil technologies, try to do code, feature cool projects, look at different files, get programs to run things like that. What was I going to say here? So, the today's show, what we're going to do is, as you didn't know, before we even get into that, sorry, quick disclaimer. Yes, we are very much aware, if you haven't seen our social media, about the current situation with RMS and Free Software Foundation and stuff like that. And I know that this is a GNU project, and people say it's technically the FSF and all that. That's not what this show is. We're not discussing that today. It's not like we were gag ordered or anything. It's just this show was planned weeks in advance, and we went ahead with this episode because we have a bunch of... Yes, thank you, Ambrose. This is a bunch of amazing engineers who have made something that rivals anything that cryptocurrency has done. You're going to see that in a moment. They had, as far as I know, they didn't have anything to do or no relation with any of the moves going on or anything. This is, again, just a project that just happens to be called GNU Taler. So, whether you want to say positive stuff about the whole situation or you want to troll, please don't do that this episode. I'll reiterate that if that has to come up later. We are just focusing on this awesome project. So what's the project that we're focusing on? What we're going to be focusing on is a project called GNU Taler. It is not a blockchain, it is not a cryptocurrency, but it is a online encrypted free software payment system. And again, I know since we're on the crypto channel on this show, I usually assume that you probably have some base knowledge about what a cryptocurrency is and how it's constructed in terms of both software and market. Normally, I would say if you want to do a recap, you can go look at the first episode we did where I coded one live. However, I do have a short video I'd like to play for all of you out there who don't know, I don't know what that is either, who don't know what a cryptocurrency is and how blockchains work, because you're going to need to know that, because when we speak to the folks at GNU Taler, then you'll be caught up and you'll know how to, like, when they talk about the differences, the major differences, how this is not a blockchain cryptocurrency, you're going to get it. I have a quick recap video to show you. So this is real quick, and it's okay, you can take a break if you already know this, on how cryptocurrency and blockchains work. particularly Bitcoin. So let's watch this, and then we're going to go straight into GNU Taler. So here we go. Let's switch screens here.
Say there's a coin that's currently worth hundreds of US dollars, but it's not made of gold or platinum or any precious metal. In fact, it's not the kind of coin you can hold in your hand or stick in a piggy bank. It's a digital currency, which means it only exists electronically. I'm talking about Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't work like most money. It isn't attached to a state or government, so it doesn't have a central issuing authority or regulatory body. Basically, that means there's no organization deciding when to make more Bitcoins, figuring out how many to produce, keeping track of where they are, or investigating fraud. So how does Bitcoin work as a currency? Or have any value at all? Well, Bitcoin wouldn't exist without a whole network of people and a little thing called cryptography. In fact, it's sometimes described as the world's first cryptocurrency, and here's how it works. Bitcoin is a fully digital currency, and you can exchange Bitcoins between computers in a worldwide peer-to-peer network. The whole point of most peer-to-peer networks is sharing stuff, like letting people make copies of super legal music or movies to download. If Bitcoin is a digital currency, what's stopping you from making a bunch of counterfeit copies and becoming fabulously wealthy? Well, unlike an MP3 or a video file, a Bitcoin isn't a string of data that can be duplicated. A Bitcoin is actually an entry on a huge global ledger called the blockchain, for reasons we'll get to in a minute. The blockchain records every Bitcoin transaction that has ever happened, and as of late 2016, the complete ledger is about 107 gigabytes of data. So when you send someone Bitcoins, it's not like you're sending them a bunch of files. Instead, you're basically writing the exchange down on that big ledger, something like Michael sends Hank 5 Bitcoins. Now, maybe you're thinking, but wait, you said that Bitcoin doesn't have a central authority to keep track of everything. Even though the blockchain is a central record, there's no official group of people who update the ledger and keep track of everybody's money like a bank does. It's decentralized. In fact, anybody can volunteer to keep the blockchain up to date with all the new transactions, and a ton of people do. It all works because there are lots of people keeping track of the same thing to make sure all transactions are accurate. Like, imagine you're playing a game of poker with some pals, but none of you have poker chips and you left your cash at home. There's no money on the table, so a few of you get out some notebooks and start writing down who bets how much, who wins, and who loses. You don't completely trust anyone else, so everyone keeps their ledgers separately. At the end of every hand, you all compare what you've written down. That way, if someone makes a mistake, or tries to cheat and snag some extra money for themselves, that discrepancy is caught. After a couple of hands, you might fill up a page of your notebook with notes about the money movement. You can think of each page as a block of transactions. Eventually, your notebook will have pages and pages of information, a chain of those blocks. Hence, blockchain. Now, if thousands of people are separately maintaining the Bitcoin blockchain, how are all the ledgers kept in sync? To stick with our poker analogy, think of the entire Bitcoin peer-to-peer network as a really huge poker table with millions of people. Some are just exchanging money, but lots of volunteers are keeping ledgers. So when you want to send or receive money, you have to announce it to everyone at the table, so the people keeping track can update their ledgers. So for every transaction, you're announcing a couple of things to the Bitcoin network: your account number, the account number of the person you're sending Bitcoins to, and how many Bitcoins you want to send. And all of the users who are keeping copies of the blockchain will add your transaction to the current block. Having a bunch of people keep track of transactions seems like a pretty good security measure. But if all it takes to send Bitcoins is a couple of account numbers, that seems like it might be a security problem. It's a huge problem with regular money. Just think of all the ways criminals try to steal other people's credit card information. And with Bitcoin, there's no central bank to notice anything weird going on to shut down fraud, like if it looked like suddenly you spent your entire life savings on beef jerky. So what's stopping Hank from pretending he's me and just sending himself all of my Bitcoins? Bitcoins are kept pretty safe thanks to cryptography, which is why it's considered a cryptocurrency. Specifically, Bitcoin stays secure because of keys, which are basically chunks of information that can be used to make mathematical guarantees about messages, like, hey, this is really from me. When you create an account on the Bitcoin network, which you might have heard called a wallet, that account is linked to two unique keys: a private key and a public key. In this case, the private key can take some data and basically mark it, also known as signing it, so that other people can verify those signatures later if they want. So let's say I want to send a message to the network that says, Michael sends 3 Bitcoins to Olivia. I sign that message using my private key, which only I have access to and nobody else can replicate. Then I send that signed message out to the Bitcoin network, and everyone can use my public key to make sure my signature checks out. That way, everyone keeping track of all the Bitcoin trading knows to add my transaction to their copy of the blockchain. blockchain. In other words, if the public key works, that's proof that the message was signed by my private key and is something I wanted to send. Unlike a handwritten signature or a credit card number, this proof of identity isn't something that can be faked by a scam artist. The who part of each transaction is obviously important to make sure the right people are swapping bitcoins, but the when matters as well. If you had $1,000 in your bank account, for example, and tried to buy two things for $1,000 each, the bank would honor the first purchase and deny the second one. If the bank didn't do that, you'd be able to spend the same money multiple times, which might sound awesome, but it's also terrible. A financial system can't work like that because no one would get paid. So if I only have enough money to pay Olivia or Hank, but I try to pay them both, there's a check built into the Bitcoin system. Both the Bitcoin network and your wallet automatically check your previous transactions to make sure you have enough Bitcoins to send in the first place. But there's another problem that might happen with timing. Because lots of people are keeping copies of the blockchain all over the world, network delays means that you won't always receive the transaction requests in the same order. So now you've got a bunch of people with a bunch of slightly different blocks to pick from, but none of them are necessarily wrong. Okay, Bitcoin, how do you solve that problem? It turns out it's by actually solving problems. Math problems. To add a block of transactions to the chain, each person maintaining a ledger has to solve a special kind of math problem created by a cryptographic hash function. A hash function is an algorithm that takes an input of any size and turns it into an output with a fixed size. For example, let's say you had this string of numbers as your input, and our example hash function says to add all of the numbers together. So in this case, the output would be 10. What makes hash functions really good for cryptography is that when you're given an input, it's really easy to find the output, but it's really hard to take an output and figure out the original input. Even in this super simple example, there are lots of strings of numbers that add up to 10. The only way to figure out that the input was 1, 2, 3, 4 is to just guess until you get it right. Now the hash function that Bitcoin uses is called SHA-256, which stands for Secure Hash Algorithm 256-bit, and it was originally developed by the United States National Security Agency. Computers that were specifically designed to solve SHA-256 hash problems take, on average, about 10 minutes to guess the solution to each one. That means they're churning through billions and billions of guesses before they get it right. Whoever solves the hash first gets to add the next block of transactions to the blockchain, which then generates a new math problem that needs to be solved. If multiple people make blocks at roughly the same time, the network picks one to keep building upon, which becomes the longest and most trusted chain. And any transactions in those alternate branches of the chain get put back into a pool to be added onto later blocks. These volunteers spend thousands of dollars on special computers built to solve SHA-256 problems and run their electricity bills up sky high to keep those machines running. But why? What do they get out of maintaining the blockchain? Is it just community service? Well, Bitcoin actually has a built-in system to reward them. Today, every time you win the race to add a block to the blockchain, 12.5 new Bitcoins are created out of thin air and awarded to your account. In fact, you might know the Bitcoin ledger keepers by another name: miners. That's because keeping the blockchain updated is like swinging a proverbial pickaxe at those hash problems, hoping to strike it rich. When Bitcoins were first created in 2009, they didn't really have any perceived value. Tens of Bitcoins would have been worth the same as a bunch of pennies. As of November 10th, 2016, though, one Bitcoin is worth $708, so 12.5 Bitcoins are worth $8,850. That's a nice chunk of change. Every single Bitcoin that exists was created to reward a Bitcoin miner. Besides the big payout when they add a new block of transactions, miners are also essentially tipped a very small amount for each transaction they add to the ledger. It's also worth noting that every 210,000 blocks, the number of coins generated when a new block is added goes down by half. So what started as a reward of 50 Bitcoins decreased to 25, then 12.5, and it'll only be around 6 Bitcoins in a couple more years, and keep decreasing. Eventually, there will be so many transactions in a block that it'll still be worthwhile for miners to mostly be paid in tips. According to current projections, the last Bitcoin, probably around the 21 millionth coin, will be mined in the year 2140. This decreasing number of Bitcoins is actually modeled off the rate at which things like gold are dug out of the earth. And the idea is that keeping the supply of Bitcoins limited will raise their value over time. So, is investing in Bitcoin a good idea? Now that's not really a SciShow kind of question. Bitcoin is still volatile and experimental. A lot of people love it, and a lot of people think it's doomed to fail. We just think it's an interesting idea, and it makes us wonder what cryptography might do for us next. Thanks for watching this episode of SciShow, brought to you by our patrons on Patreon. If you want to help support the show, just go to patreon.com/SciShow, and don't forget to go to youtube.com/SciShow and subscribe.
Quantum computers are exciting because they can
Okay, so before we get into things, that was the quick recap. So hopefully everyone's now caught up on, if you were living under a rock, what cryptocurrency is, what a blockchain is, how that whole system works, what are tokens, values, all of that. Because now we're going to get into how things compare and contrast. Right before I get into it, though, I just want to reiterate that if you like the content that you see so far and you're interested in some of our upcoming shows as well as our meeting third Friday every month, I believe next month will be on April 16th, and we'll probably announce that in roughly 2 weeks. Or you are interested in some of our other shows and specials, you can hit that bell on YouTube and click like, share, and subscribe on Twitch, DLive, or again YouTube. Also, hi everyone out there on Diode Zone. Hi everyone out there who's unfortunately stuck on Facebook, and hi particularly everyone out there who is watching this via Invidis through Tor. You people are ultra elite. Another last thing, okay, that was weird. All right, that I want to bring up is that we're going to now go over to the GNU Taler folks. I'm so excited that they're here and they're going to introduce themselves and talk about their project as I attempt to adjust the logo for our show. That got, I didn't realize it was going to be that huge. Actually, what I'll do is I'll stick this on the other, there we go. I don't mind that it's being covered here. There, I'll put that in the corner. But if anyone in the live stream chat has any questions for the GNU Taler engineer folks, please mention that, and I will relay that over to them during after their short presentation when we're in the chit-chatting mode. So if you have any questions about what Taler is, a clarification on anything that they said, any engineering questions about it, financial questions, please let me know in chat and I'll go over. Otherwise, if you are lurking and learning, no problems for you. One last quick thing, that bar above, you can see we're 91 out of 1,000 followers. That's for DLive. If you are particularly on DLive, it's completely free to follow. Everything's free on these streams. And if we reach 100 people, particularly on DLive, we'll be able to do a lot more with that account, particularly for this show, Crypto Baron. So, we have stalled long enough. You all are caught up on cryptocurrency. We're now going to unmute and speak to the awesome folks at GNU Taler. Here we go. I'm going to unmute. Your folks are all ready here? Awesome. So let me just, okay, so the audio is on for that. And here's a bunch of awesome folks that they're going to introduce themselves. So take it away. Thank you, guys. It's very awesome to have both of you.
is looking into creating a digital euro. Facebook is trying to
As weird as
Have you done transatlantic before? I guess. Yes, I can speak. Yeah. Okay. So the principles for the Taler design are ordered by priority. The highest priority is that it has to be free software, because if it's not free software, somebody else is in control of your computer. And that's obviously very bad, because then they're basically in control of your life, given the importance of computers today. And if it's a payment system, which is a kind of critical infrastructure that you need every day for your economic interactions, it's doubly bad. And we really believe that it has to be free software in order to avoid somebody usurping control of our lives. The second goal that we have with Taler has to protect the privacy of buyers. So when you buy something with Taler, you should be able to be anonymous. You should not have to be identified by anybody. Of course, if you go to a shop, the merchant may see you. If you use a normal browser, they might get your IP address, but the payment system itself should not collect any information about the identity of the buyer. Third goal, we want the system to enable the states to tax income and crack down on illegal business activities. So it should not be possible to do extortion, to do, I encrypted your hard drive. If you don't pay me 5 Bitcoins, you will never see your data again. We want this to be legal. We want states to be able to raise taxes, to pay for streets, schools, universities, and so on. And it shouldn't be a head tax. It should be based on your ability to pay, which means the state has to be able to see your income to adjust the tax rate accordingly. The fourth goal is that we, of course, need to prevent payment fraud as much as possible. In particular, we need to, prevent things like double spending or other activities where somebody, might do something bad with money. But this should not come at the expense of privacy of buyers. So if you have a way to reduce fraud, but it forces us to hurt the privacy of buyers, for example, we would reject this. Once there's no fraud, then we additionally, of course, want to only disclose the minimum amount of information necessary in all other respects of the system. So if it's not really required to prevent fraud, then again, minimum information disclosure from all parties to all parties. Sixth goal is the whole system has to be usable, because otherwise, you build something wonderful, but nobody can use it, then you have no impact on society. It has to be efficient. We want something that does not cause the electricity consumption of major industrial countries to be blown into the air for solving mathematical puzzles that have otherwise no value. And we want to avoid as much as possible single points of failure. Again, as much as possible, this is not the highest goal on the list. And the system should foster competition, so there should be a possibility for multiple providers at the same time for the various components of the system. Let me give you a brief overview of how the system works. We have here the customer in the lower left corner. Everything okay?
when you're good, we hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, just saw you interacting. Anyway, so we have the customer lower left corner. The first step typically would be that the customer tells the customer's bank, hey, I would like to withdraw money. You can think of this as very similar to you going to your ATM and saying, look, I would like to have cash. It's digital cash after all. So in this case, the customer's bank would have to do a wire transfer to the payment service provider's bank. We call the payment service provider also the exchange. The exchange would then basically create digital coins and allow the customer to withdraw those coins. Again, you can think of this also like with physical cash. Your home bank has at some point gone to the central bank or the US Mint, which has created some coins, and then your home bank can hand you out those coins and you can put them into your wallet. In return, of course, the bank will deduct the respective amount from your regular balance in your bank account. Once you've received the digital coins, and I should say, in this process, you are of course identified. The customer's bank needs to know their customer, so know your customer regulation is also satisfied. But now you have the coins in your wallet. In this case, digital coins. You can spend those coins at some merchant, say a web shop over the internet or also in person, and the merchant will receive, well, let's say the coins, mathematically not exactly the same kind of thing he's getting, and the merchant has to at that point deposit them with the payment service provider. The payment service provider checks at this point against double spending, so make sure that the coins have not already been spent using a serial number that they learn in this process. And basically, if the same coin is spent twice, then they will reject it and tell the merchant, nope, sorry, that wasn't really a real coin, so this has to be done online. And if the exchange says this coin was valid, it will retire the coin and eventually transfer the amount to the merchant, who will receive it in their bank account and can of course then check their bank account and say, yep, I got paid. Now I should say the retiring here and the wire transfer, these are again aggregate transfers. So just like here, you might go and say, I'm going to withdraw $100, and then you spend $2, spend $2, spend $2. The transfer to the merchant is again, well, the exchange will go and say, oh, let me bunch up the transactions for a week, 2 weeks. The merchant can say how long, how much can be batched up. But then there'll be one wire transfer, your income this month was 10,000 euros, here, send you 10,000 euros, and not for every transaction here in step 4, we will do one transaction in the traditional banking system. Why is that important? Well, these wire transfers here are rather expensive. They can cost, 5, 10 cents. I don't know in America, but that's the range in Europe, for the banks to execute those transfers. In contrast, these transactions here, where we do everything cryptographically secured and with privacy, those are extremely cheap, like a thousandth of a cent. So that's why it makes sense to accumulate many of these small transactions into larger transactions here. Now, the payment service provider can, for the service, charge fees. If it's a government-run central bank, maybe they might choose not to charge fees, but of course they can charge fees to keep in business. That's the business model behind it here, so to speak. Florian, your turn.
Yeah, so I'm now going to go into some more details on how this is actually implemented, first in the cryptography side. So the most important primitive in the system is actually blind signatures. These allow the exchange to sign a token where a serial number is provided by the customer and give the signature back to the customer without actually knowing what the exchange signed. So this is kind of where the transfer happens between money that is not anonymous to these digital tokens that are blindly signed by the exchange and then can't be associated with the initial withdrawal process anymore. And this is actually a pretty old system designed by Chom in the 1980s. And our version is effectively an extension of this, where the main innovation is a refresh protocol that still allows efficient transactions while preserving this important income transparency property of Taler. So income transparency in this context means that whenever in Taler you make a finalized transaction, then the receiver of this transaction is known to an auditor or the government or the bank that you use as the underlying financial system for Taler. And in general, we are not really doing any fancy cryptography. So everything we're using is really based on proven constructions and primitives. So hash functions, elliptic curve cryptography, cut and choose protocols, and RSA blind signatures, for example. We do have an abstract description of the protocol also in our security proof. So that means we have some agility for which primitives we're using. Right now, we're still using RSA blind signatures, but we might, for example, also move to elliptic curve blind signatures in the future based on blind Schnorr signatures. And the niceties of the protocol are things like forgettable fields in the digital contract that's made between the customer and merchant. That's just another feature that contributes to the whole like data minimization aspect of the protocol and system. So yeah, thank you. Now I've talked a bit about the cryptography. Let's look at the components that are actually needed to implement to deploy the system. All of Thaler is not a monolithic system, but it's really a set of modular components that all have a well-defined API that you can effectively plug together like Lego components to then deploy your own payment system. So from the perspective of the payment service provider, there's the main Exchange API service that of course has an underlying database, a wire gateway, which is the point or the API where the payment service provider lets the Thaler side of the system, so the exchange, talk to the underlying financial system, such as some bank API or some API to talk to the blockchain if you're deploying Thaler with Bitcoin. We have the crypto software security modules that handle keys and signatures, as well as the auditing functionality for the exchange. On the side of the merchant, there's the merchant backend API, which is the main component that you would talk to if you're integrating with Thaler as a merchant, because that abstracts all the cryptographic operations and key management that the merchant needs to do. So storefronts, like a shop, for example, like some web shop or some physical point of sale terminal, just talk to this merchant backend API. And then we have a back office UI that's used to just inspect effectively what's going on in the merchant backend. And from the user point of view, we have a wallet, which is implemented as also as one component with a well-defined API. And then we have multiple UIs for it. So at the moment, we provide a web extension, so a browser extension that works across multiple browsers, a command line interface, and an Android application. And we're currently also working on a backup solution for the user, as well as a key and recovery solution, so that you don't have this dilemma that either you need to hand off your keys to some trusted third party or that you need to completely manage them yourself. And if you want to have a closer look, here are some of the more hands-on resources. So we have a demo that I've heard will also be tried out later in the stream. You can have a look at all our repositories on our Git. And we have like a quite extensive documentation, and also recently Christian published a paper with the Swiss National Bank that explains how to use Thaler from the perspective of a central bank. And here is one example of our deployments, which is at BFH, so a Swiss university, where we've deployed Thaler in the cafeteria, and you can see a vending machine here. It's not that easy to see on this image, but there's a QR code that allows your wallet app to interact with this vending machine and then buy something from it via Thaler. Okay, that's it from our introduction side, and we're happy to now go into the interview part and answer a bunch of questions.
Correctly, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
Just making sure all the audio is working on my end, because apparently everything's finally working now. So yeah, no, thank you for that quick synopsis and everything, and of course I know everything was sort of cut off in the beginning. So, and also to note, we actually have a very lively chat crowd, but I'm gonna kind of like do some like translation because. Again, the usual audience that I have, they're really nice and really chill, but they're so used to talking about blockchain and cryptocurrency stuff that I'm gonna have to kind of do some translation bits. So, you went over before.
Cryptocurrency will to a large degree as well.
Yes, and as you probably as you also in the presentation, you also have, again, because this is an ecosystem. This is not an actual currency. This is basically like a platform and a way to route currency, that you do have like the interface that if you were to use a cryptographic token, you could use it. So I guess the first question from chat, because I always go through chat stuff first before my personal question, is basically, you mentioned before about how it is not a token, but can you go in a bit more depth of what exactly are the advantages of this compared to most blockchain systems that are used for finance? Note I didn't even say cryptocurrency or tokens, but blockchain for finance. Like, what are the advantages of this over that?
Let me start by basically saying this is actually a token. The blockchain isn't. I know this will be completely controversial to some of you,
No, I completely get it.
Bitcoin
But
is a
explain,
coin.
yeah.
But it's not, because in Bitcoin you have an account. Your public key is basically your account, and your private key is your access to your account. So in Bitcoin, you don't have coins, you have accounts. A ledger, that's already the term. It says it's an account-based system. Now, here you really have more tokens. And what's the difference between a token and an account? Well, an account has a history. I can basically, in Bitcoin, I can follow your history. I can see, oh, the money came into your account from here, from these other accounts, and from this account, it went to these other accounts. So I have a lot of history. Now, a Taler coin doesn't have any history. When I spend it, at that point, it's kind of, from the other side, because it was withdrawn with a blind signature, it was virgin. Nobody else has ever seen this thing before. So I know nothing about you. I can't track you by it. I can't trace you, right? You're just spending this, and yet then, you can't spend it again, but that's about it. So there's no account here when you use the Taler payment system, when you do any payments. Now, of course, money comes in from accounts. Money at the merchant goes out into accounts. But once you're really inside the Taler payment system for the actual transaction, you don't use accounts. Now, that changes a lot of things. First of all, much lower risk. When you lose your wallet, you lose the coins that are in your wallet, but not everything. The number of people that have lost account access in cryptocurrencies is legend, or at least the amounts. Second thing is, we don't need, to have worry about this very expensive proof of work. We have very efficient operations. There is no decentralized network where we have to maintain, some kind of consensus. We have the exchange. It's one operator that just has to check off this coin has been spent, put into the database as spent, finished. That is way more efficient than to replicate across the entire globe, oh, this transaction has happened. So I can do 1,000 transactions per second on my desktop at home, client side and server side. So basically, playing both merchant and customer and exchange on the same desktop. Now, 1,000 transactions per second on one computer. Bitcoin can do 7 using, a lot more computers globally. So it's way more efficient to do it this way. And that matters when you actually want to be used for payments as opposed to store of value and speculation. Because Visa card, MasterCard, they do tens of thousands of transactions per second, and it doesn't work to go and say, well, we can do 7 if you actually want to be for payments. I think those are the starting points where I would draw the lines.
Perfect. Exactly like the way you explained it earlier, that the Taler tokens legit this is from my understanding, and it's okay if you can correct me, they legit work like a digital version of cash, because as you said, with like Taler being once it's tokenized, when it's become a token, it's very similar to having like an actual money where you're actually exchanging bits, as opposed to like having an entire address transaction history on a chain, which, as we said in my first episode, where we explained and went in depth of like what a blockchain is and what exactly like tokens are represented on that, that makes sense. And a lot of people in chat are kind of blown away. And to quickly answer someone's question here, and if you want to jump in, that's fine, because I know this answer. Yes, particularly with especially with Bitcoin, everyone can see your entire, like if they know the account like they're looking for, that's a public ledger. Everyone can see the transaction data for that. And so from, I guess I'll spin off to, just to clarify, so basically, again, this is using other money systems. So when, so like, again, while this is still being exchanged by banks, once it becomes tokenized, that's when the actual privacy and encryption part comes from, and that's where you can spend back and forth. So like basically people won't necessarily know, like the general, like people trying to snoop won't notice, but like the banks and like for the US, the IRS and the federal government, and of course the merchants would know. Is that correct, or do you want to elaborate on that?
The IRS would see it basically in step 6 here, right? When the payment service provider sees it in step 5, and then the IRS sees it in step 6, right? That's where your revenue comes in, right? And so, once the IRS sees, okay, you received money into your bank account, well, they will ask you, what's this income? Did you pay your taxes on it? And so this is visible, right? But this one here is not.
I just wanted to clarify that again because it's so great. Yeah, and can you actually quickly go in, because this person's really curious, and again, in my opinion, there's no stupid questions, there's just stupid implementations. So basically, this sort of system basically combats anyone trying to like use like the Taler tokens and stuff for like nefarious elect purposes. Would that be correct? Do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, let's put it this way. I can use Taler perfectly fine to buy drugs. However, it would be very difficult for somebody else to illegally sell me drugs, because, that can be traced, and then somebody the government would find out that you sold the drugs. But as long as it's not, illegal to buy, I'm fine as a buyer. Sorry, I mean, as a buyer, I'm always fine. The problem is if it's illegal, it's usually a problem for the seller, right?
Thank you for that clarification. So, because I guess we're waiting for more questions in chat, I get to ask kind of the fun ones, and sometimes I ask really boneheaded questions on purpose, sometimes it's a bit more in depth. So the first thing I actually want to ask is, and this is kind of stupid, but I've never heard anyone ask this. Is there any particular meaning behind like the project name Taler? Why was that name particularly chosen for this, or did you just thought it was a cool name?
Yeah, so actually originally this was an acronym for Taxable Anonymous Libre Electronic Reserves, which just describes what the project does. And also the name actually goes back to effectively the word origin of the dollar. So we just thought this was a cute pun.
Awesome. So unless someone else wants to comment on that, my other question is, so what was the process, like yourselves and other members of this project, how did this, you can go into depth or as simple as you want, but basically, how did this idea like come about among the different project teams, and sort of how did you all come together in order to work on this?
Well, we were working on GNU Net, which is trying to build a better internet, and as part of building a better internet, there was this need for a better payment system, and I looked at the fact that the patents from David Chaum, software patents, were about to expire, and I said, well, this is a starting point for what we actually need as a payment system, because it offers both privacy and accountability in the right proportion. And I said, well, that's all good. David Chaum's idea from 1988 is not so bad, but it lacks a couple of crucial things, like being able to give change. And so I said, Florian, could you please, you're doing a course in my, he was attending one of my courses. I said, well, would be good if somebody could solve this problem, how to give change. And then Florian came back one day, a student at the time, and said, I've got a solution. He presented it to me. I said, no, I don't think that works. A week later, he came back and presented it again and said, look, it does work. That time I got it. And then we had to build it.
So I guess next question, and some of these seem general, and we're going to kind of get into like a bit more technical stuff in a moment, is that when this was brought up to GNU.net and stuff, what was sort of the response from like, not just from the other GNU, the other people working on their GNU projects, but like the FOSS world in general to this?
I don't know. There's a very broad world out there. But what I can say is that at the time I was receiving questions from Richard about, what do you think about this cryptocurrency? What do you think about this version? What do you think about this? And every time I tried to explain to him how, what the different variations on the various cryptocurrencies were. And eventually I said, Richard, by the way, maybe I could tell you what we are working on here. And well, shortly afterwards, we were a GNU package.
It's pretty neat. That's the kind of like neat that you went from like this whole conception and sort of prototyping to going on to this. So I guess my next question with that was, could you walk me through, particularly in the early days, like what were some of the earlier obstacles that you had to overcome, and as simple as in depth as you want, how did you manage to go over those obstacles in terms of technically trying to put organize people together, work on this, as well as like the different technical hurdles that were cropping up in the beginning, if any?
So I think in the beginning, one of the more challenging things was to not just design how the protocols work on the cryptographic side, but how things are actually solved from a software engineering perspective, how they're solved from a integration perspective. So we actually spent a lot of time thinking about how to properly integrate this into web applications, how to make this work on multiple devices, how to make the protocols as understandable as possible to other developers. So I think a lot of time actually went into not just the cryptography part, but really the software engineering side of things.
Yeah, and I would stress, keeping it simple is kind of crucial here, because you want other people to understand it. Or as the people who did our security review did, they said, the goal doesn't have to be that it is secure. It has to be that it's obviously secure. And to some degree, on the academic side, we succeeded a bit too spectacularly, given that we got conference reviews going back saying, this is too simple. But that's good, because it was so simple that they couldn't find a flaw with it. Just they said it's now boring. And I think boring security is high praise, but doesn't lead to tons of publications, but that's okay. Maybe it results in a good and secure payment system.
There's also something that we often bring up at DC 201, which is that you also have to have like what's your like threat model, and sort of like what's the range of your security. If I have to tell people like, the reason why you have like locks on your windows and doors is not because, again, if this was like the FBI or the criminal element like wanted a battering ram and get through your door or your window, even no matter how like barbaric it is, they will get through. You have that there to prevent like 70+% of the people who would just try the doorknob, realize they can't open it, and walk away. So it's like, just because it's simple security doesn't mean that it's like useless. And we have this bad thing in the security world of like, we're so in depth with what we do as a hobby or as a job that we often we can't see the forest for the trees, and we forget that. And that's where, funny enough, some of the most really obviously glaring security flaws end up happening.
Well, I won't exactly say it's simple security. I mean, here's just the list of keys that we have in the system.
I don't.
Right?
Yeah,
So,
when I say simple, I
but
don't mean that
the nice
as
thing
a.
is, the cryptography can be reasonably simple, and the APIs can be reasonably simple, and the code and architecture can try to make it readable, right? But it doesn't mean that the security overall ends up being simple.
When I say simple, I don't mean that at all as any sort of like a form of negative or whatsoever. I'm more referring to it's like how a lot of people see kind of like one of the original meanings of like the word hack, where you write or you do or you implement just like such a simple action, but it just solves so many problems elegantly at the same time. That's what I meant by simple.
In that sense, it's very fair to say a lot of hacking was involved.
Oh yes. Did you might want to without like obviously there might be some sensitive information even though this is a free software project. But do you want to expand on some of the hacking you had to do in order to get this stuff to work?
Well, I wouldn't say that it involved like any hacking in the offensive sense. It's just that, for example, for actually integrating with the banking system in Europe, which is based on really bad and old legacy protocols, we had to, well, not quite reverse engineer the protocols, but it was actually quite an engineering and spec reading and interpretation efforts to get the kind of wire gateway from the payment service provider to some of the European banking APIs running.
Speaking of those legacy systems, I guess if we don't mind, I want to run to the other end of the spectrum, and I also want to remind again that because I think everyone's so flabbergasted by this, we actually have a good amount of people constantly watching. If you have any questions for the GNU Taler team and their project here, you can ask that in chat, and I'll relay that over to them. Otherwise, again, if you're lurking and learning, that's as long as you're learning, that's the whole point of this show. We're here to learn. So I guess to go on the other end of the spectrum, when I asked to compare and like what's the advantages over like cryptocurrency financial systems, this is kind of a laugh. What are the major advantages for example, like I can easily see someone who doesn't quite understand this and be like, well, what's the difference between this and like having credit? So if you want to like explain like what are the advantages of this over traditional banking systems like around the world?
Given that you used the word credit, I have to remind you that the R in Taler stands for reserve. And if you are not in the financial industry, you might want to know that a reserve is kind of the opposite of credit. You have to have the money first. So with Taler, the idea is once you have it in your wallet, like when you have cash in your wallet and you spend that, you're not taking a credit. You're not going into debt. So one of the things that a bit is supposed to go away is the debt trap by spending with your credit card money that you don't have. So it's important for us that you know a bit how much you've spent and not just at the end of the month when the big bill comes. And so having this as money in your wallet, it might help some people manage their spending as well because they get an overview and it's not a credit system.
Yeah, but the main difference between this and what, for example, banks do is, of course, the privacy aspect and then the free software infrastructure. So when you're using your bank, in the end, you will be interacting with some proprietary system. And of course, the bank knows plain text all the transactions that you make.
And to expand on this, when the bank because the bank needs to know that you're accessing your account, you need to identify yourself, which means they have an authentication problem. As you all know, type in your PIN, get your SMS on your phone, do a video identification, whatever. So when you spend money with your bank account, you need to be identified. So we have an identification for an authentication problem. With Taler, once the money is in your Taler wallet, all we need from you is an authorization. I don't need to know who you are. I mean, your wallet, is your device, your computer. you are logged in, you have the computer. That's all you need is to authorize the transaction. And so authorization on your device, you can do with one mouse click. Whereas authentication, receiving a PIN, typing in it on credit card, typing CCV codes, doing whatever else might be required, is a bit more work. So it also becomes, in some sense, more convenient to spend money, just like with cash. You hand it over, and that's one simple step, and not I have to first tell my bank, yes, this is me, please do this. So it also actually improves usability if you can substitute authentication with authorization.
Awesome. That's perfectly understandable. One of the new things that I learned, because I do keep up on this project again, like I'm not even kidding when I'm dead serious about this. This is my favorite projects out of the whole GNU sort of ecosystem. I can actually tell you right now, because we did this for a meeting. I don't know if you know about this. My least favorite one that I actually did a talk about at a previous meeting is the Psych protocol that was made years ago for SecuShare and stuff, because that's just it's such an archaeological dig. But one of the recent things I found out was that as you showed with the vending machine, you've made or you're in the process of making an Android app that can be interfaced, so you're not limited to desktop. You can actually have something to carry with you. Did you had experience with developing for mobile backgrounds, and regardless if you did or not, what has been the challenges with essentially making a mobile app for this?
Yeah, so I would say the mobile app started out as quite a big hack first. So the wallet is actually written in TypeScript. So it first ran in browsers, and then of course you can make it run on Node.js. And to actually do the Android app, what we did is we cross-compiled Node.js and V8 to run on Android, and effectively just put a graphical user interface on top. So it's actually the exact same code that's running in the command line interface, that's also running in the web extension, in the Android app, and also in the future in the iOS app. And I think from our part, the big challenges were to just get this running. And it turned out to be actually performant enough for our purposes. And the second challenge was then, of course, the user experience design, because the core team of Thaler is more familiar with low-level stuff like protocol design and cryptography. So it was just a major challenge to really tackle all the usability problems.
So this is a fun one. This is kind of a two-part question. So the first part is, how did you convince a university to put a vending machine with this system implemented? What was building that like?
Oh, that was very easy. Our university has an annual call for do we have some kind of proposals for research funding into infrastructure? And usually, faculty members propose, oh, I would like to buy a big server, or I would like to buy a stack of graphics card for some machine learning or something like this. And I proposed to buy a vending machine for this particular purpose, and wrote a half-page justification, and then basically got told, yeah, approved.
Awesome. And if I remember correctly, because I believe there was a talk about this, and this was one of the times I wish I was in this place person. I think it was 2 years ago, because this had to be before 2020, that you brought either that vending machine or a cousin of it to the Chaos Computer Congress. So I wanted to ask, what was that experience like, essentially being an open beta with thousands of European hackers, and were they just fascinated with this, or did they really try to test this thing?
Well, first of all, it is the same machine. We basically, before we put it up at the university, told the vendor, ship it directly to Congress. And, so that was really the alpha test, so to speak. The team was doing the software testing on site of the vendor of the machine. And then we had shipped it to Congress first, and then only afterwards towards the university. Now, at the Congress, I must say, the problem is it's very, very big. And so I think not many people actually understood what this thing was. But, once we sold electronics in it, that became quite popular, as you can imagine, especially once the electronics were sold out everywhere else. And they went, oh, we can buy them here. So, you have to put the right stuff in it. You can kind of see in the picture, we have actually tools in the vending machine, we have books in the vending machine, and snacks and stickers. So it has retained some of this aspect that it's not quite the normal contents. And if you look at the book, one of the special things about this book is it's describing a dystopian world in Great Britain. And the GNU plays a role in that book, and I have been told that the next book in that series will also feature Taler. So we're now also art or fiction, if you want.
Awesome, congratulations on that. To me, that's, again, as someone who's been in projects successful and that's gone successfully and failed and have struggled through both of those, that's a real achievement to just go from like these vague ideas but being passionate about something to being featured in something. So congratulations on that. A little bit more on the vending machine, and I promise we'll move away from the vending machine unless you guys really like it. What sort of hardware and software is the vending machine using to communicate with the Android app to interface with Taler?
Okay, so in the vending machine there is the original from the vendor coming multi-drop bus enabled kind of main thing that is the controller that drives all of the motors and drives the air conditioning and so on, and drives the keypad that you can see here. And then we connected this to some Chinese adapter that sits on top of a Raspberry Pi. That adapter is very expensive, and the University Electrical Engineering Department is actually working on replacing it with a new one that we made ourselves from the Electrical Engineering Department. But that's basically just speaking the multi-drop bus protocol. And the funky thing that the multi-drop bus protocol is a 9-bit protocol. Yes, you heard that correctly. 9-bit protocol with very particular timing requirements, designed in the 60s or something like that. Totally crazy, but very common in vending machines, apparently. So translating that 9-bit protocol with timing requirements onto a Raspberry Pi is what this hardware does. Kind of very specific hardware. And then on the Raspberry Pi, we have one adapter over USB that has an NFC control. It goes to the NFC device. It's sitting down here below the plate. And on the Raspberry Pi, on the other pins, we have connected a standard display, which shows the QR code, and also connected the button to a GPIO pin. So if you push that button, you can cancel the current transaction. And I should say the Raspberry Pi also offers Wi-Fi support, so it's also a hotspot, performs network address translation for the user, so that the mobile phone can be online around the vending machine.
Again, I'm one of those it's known around the world, filthy Americans. So I do want to make the comment that it's always fascinating to see also while there's commonality, I like that every region, even within the same country, kind of has their own group of hackers with their own history and ethics and backgrounds and stuff like that. And so I remember when I heard, oh, the vending machines at CCC, that's a good choice. I know it's in you're in Europe, but it's I was that's a good choice, because I'm just trying to imagine this machine at an American Hacker Conference. And I'm not saying that the American hackers are all disrespectful, because a lot of us, you probably interact with a bunch of us, a lot of us are, but I'm just thinking if I was at university and this went to an American convention, never mind CCC, I'd be worried about getting the machine back and the Raspberry Pi being flashed with all sorts of dumb craziness and just phalluses sprayed painted everywhere. So I'm kind of every time I see CCC, it's not like shenanigans don't happen, but I feel there's kind of more oh, this is curious, kind of working at how does this work, while in America it's can we blow it up and send it into space? So I don't bring that up. Yeah,
I have to admit, you're looking a bit too positively on the other side of the grass here. It's not that green here. We did experience one hack at the Congress where we basically, because we had several people taking care of and refilling the machine, we left the keys of the machine in the physical place where you would get change, also overnight. And so some very great hackers, lock pickers, as you know, decided,
That's what I would have
the
done.
keys. Let's just open the machine up
Yep.
and empty it out, and then take the keys with us. So with a note, you've been hacked. That's the level of European hacks. But as far as we know, they were quite drunk, and we got the items back later. But so if you think the hack is physically finding the key that we left on the machine for ease of demonstration, we were happy for people to look into it and try to figure out how does it work and stuff, right? But lock picking was the key.
Yep, literally.
Great hack, guys. But let's just assume that these people were very, very drunk.
No, and I'm not saying that doesn't happen there. Trust me, I've seen shenanigans. Because I have friends all over the world and place, and they send me stuff. I'm just more thinking, it's funny because literally, if that was like a group of us, like lockpickers I know, I honestly, again, I would have given everything back. Like I would just have waited to see like the reaction. I probably would have done that, but I probably would have replaced everything in there with just beer and sex toys, just to let you know about like that sort of thing. But that is fascinating. I was actually debating by asking like, did someone actually like hack the thing? It's also fascinating because if you're using a standard vending machine model, again, I don't know if there's any variance within Western or Eastern Europe, but I'm assuming that they probably are using tubular or in America they're known as Chicago styled locks, which they have impressioners for. So I'm fascinated with that.
This one doesn't.
That one doesn't. Okay. Are they using Are they just using normal pin tumblers, or are they using dimple locks?
This one is a funky one where it's a flat key, but it has like a snake on the side of the key, and so it has tumblers and some other stuff. It's cool.
I understand.
I'm not a picker, so.
Yeah, no, I understand because there's often like, I see a lot of interesting stuff coming out of just general Europe, and like I've seen things where like keys with wings and stuff like that. You sort of see the variants. It's actually kind of funny because I'm thinking of this and how like PhD Days has the like hack the sorry, my brain just blanked out, the money kiosk, and I'm like, that's basically kind of what the American HackerCons and I guess the major Eastern European HackerCon have in common, of like, cool thing, try to break into it. And I'm not saying that stuff doesn't happen in Western Europe. I just find it fascinating with like the different cultures and how we're all living in different spots, but like a lot of times fundamentally like we're all interested in the same stuff, or similar stuff.
Yeah. And I should say, we're basically telling the students at the university, you can hack the system, that is deployed there, but no physical hacks. Don't steal the machine, don't try to lockpick, don't steal the server. Those are not the hacks we're interested in, because of course, this kind of physical OPSEC is not something you can really, let's say, practice at a university.
It's rules of engagement, and also that stuff you can develop later when everything's working in your software project. You want to develop and mature the software. So questions. Was there in terms of the encryption? Was that a process where you were trying to figure out, like, did you try out other forms of encryption and they didn't work? And like, are there other forms in the future you're looking into, like, interesting in order to harden and upgrade the encryption for the Taler token system?
First of all, let me tell you one thing. Encryption is illegal in India, and Taler is perfectly legal in India because we don't use encryption.
Gotcha. That's fascinating. I did not know that. That's really cool.
We just use blinding and signatures and hashing. There is no encryption.
Okay. Again, that's why I'm glad that you're here, because I want, you worked on the project, you know it better than I do, and I'm great to clarify, which is why I'm very happy you're here.
So in terms of, primitives, we basically started with the RSA and elliptic curves and these hash functions, and no, we never really had a problem with the, the crypto was basically finalized after Florian's proposal for those aspects. There have been other things that have been added later to add more features, but we never had really a need to change the encryption. most recently with this, I guess, RSA scare, of course, there was the question, what happens if RSA were really broken? And we know that we can fix this. There are other ciphers we could use in this case. But so far, there doesn't seem to be a need for it. But the good thing is we have cipher agility. So if somebody decides that they have a break on SHA-512, well, give us another hash function. We can put that in. If you break EDD 25519, okay, great. Curve 25519 is broken. Let's find us another curve. So in that respect, we have this agility, but so far the primitives we've picked have held up very well.
Yeah, so effectively the whole system is kind of described on two levels. One of them is the more abstract level where we just say what do our primitives need to satisfy, like which properties, and then we have a concrete instantiation that uses, for example, curve 25519 that uses RSA blind signatures, but of course you can swap these out for other primitives that fulfill the same like abstract mathematical properties.
Neat, and it's actually a quick follow-up question because I find that fascinating about India. Because of how varied and also rigid and dinosauric sometimes a lot of the banking systems are worldwide, trying to design a system that basically works for like, you're trying to make this work for like everyone. Have you run into any problems or pushbacks between like different finance laws between countries where you tried to implement this?
Well, we are still trying to implement it legally in the first country, right? I mean, it's not like you can just run a payment system and say, yeah, this should be fine. You do need regulatory approval, and that's why the US is a basket case, because we've got 50 states with 50 different regulations.
We're anal.
Approval in every one of them.
We're anal. If something works here, it works everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, in Europe, it works in one country, it works everywhere. In the US, it works in one state. No good luck with the other 49. Even in Europe, there of course there are limitations on what kind of amounts you can transact with privacy, and I would not be surprised if North Korea was not quite acceptant to our idea of privacy. But our goal right now is to get it deployed wherever possible. Whoever can make it happen, should make it happen for any use case that's possible, and in every country where this is allowed. And wherever it's not allowed, I would just urge people to pick up the political fight to make it legal.
That's it's kind of funny because that kind of goes into like, just quick tangent, just North Korean business where it's like I'm also very fascinated. Like, I don't do this, obviously, I would never do this, but I've been fascinated about like people who make counterfeits, whether it's of money or of objects, and the running joke is that the reason why North Korea is considered level 10 is because they're basically a U.S. legal tender printing facility, but just based in North Korea. That's like how, because they stole the plates and stuff, their operation is. So never mind the encryption, I could also imagine just sort of like, yeah, but our kind of economy runs on United States dollars directly. That would be a whole thing. So jumping to another similar thing, and there'll be a couple questions more because I don't want to keep you all here. There were a lot of questions at the beginning, and it seems like we still have the same view numbers. I think just everyone's speechless. This is really good. I'm really excited about this. This has turned out way better than I expected. Not that I had low expectations or anything. I actually had high expectations for this. And then I'll try to do the demo, and then honestly, I think I'll call it today. So I know you want to try to deploy the system everywhere, but all good projects have a form of roadmap. So I'm saying this, if everything like, you have it, I'm not saying that's not stable now, but like you're comfortable with it, it's working, you want to like truly put this in production and stuff. What do you see like do you have a roadmap to like, okay, here are the sort of businesses and marketplaces and stuff that we think would probably be the most interested in adopt this, and then we can expand from here? Or is it just we're throwing it out there and just seeing who adopts it?
No, we're not throwing it out, but of course we have a roadmap, and as we mentioned before, there are some critical features that we're still working on, like the backup and key escrow and recovery. If everything is working great, yeah, but the user cannot back up his wallet right now very well. And that's for me a key feature that I would want as a user, that if I drop my phone in the toilet, the data is not lost. And you might go and say, but Android has a backup functionality. Yeah, but I don't trust that one. I don't want the Taler wallet. You don't want this to end up in the Google Cloud for Google to plunder and inspect, right? So there are some features we still want to really see before deployment. We are still have to do some integration testing with the concrete banks that we're working with. So I would not say development is finished, even for the core functionality that we think is crucial before launch. You can give something to students, that's a different story than giving something to real users. But once we have done this, the organizations that should be most interested in this is basically anything related to journalism. If you are a journalist, well, these days you're moving to Substack, as we have seen in the US. And one key issue is you want to get paid, right? Even journalists have to eat. And if you work in the big media industry, you have to tanker to the corporate line, to your corporate owners. So it's good if a journalist can be independent adversarial to the system, but then they still need to eat. And well, tracking your users and selling them advertisement, well, first of all, it makes you dependent on advertisers. And secondly, well, you're tracking your users. And if you're adversarial enough, then your users become suspect terrorists or something like that. Not so good. On the other hand, again, you do want to eat. Now, you can't track your users. And if you ask them for their credit card, well, first of all, most are not going to pull out their credit card to buy a newspaper article that's worth effectively 5 cents. And again, you would track your users because the credit card is a tracking system. So with Taler, your users could literally pay the 5 cents for the newspaper article. You would still pocket most of that amount because the transaction fees can be really low, and you don't collect data on your users. So I think journalism or any other kinds of micropayments is the primary use case for this, where we currently have no solution as a society and where we urgently need one.
Now, even though Android is known as a, and this is the only time I'm going to use this word because this would accurately describe particularly Android and, an open source platform. But, okay. Sorry.
No, sorry. Android is not open source. I mean, there is the main parts of Android, all of the Google libraries are not open source. There is a core of the system, but that's a very tiny part these days of Android. And if you use most of the Android APIs, they are not open or free software.
Right, that's actually what I was going to get into exactly, which is that that's what it's just like general public. I'm just saying like general public and stuff describes it as that, but with Google locking their stuff down and even doing more so than even when they before, and obviously things like Apple just completely switching their chipset and everything. When developing the Android app. Have you had to go over hurdles of, again, that sort of like invasiveness lockdown that's been there's been even more and more dominant within the Android platform?
So far, we've had this problem more visible with the browser extension, because Google there is restricting more and more what you can actually do in a browser extension. There's this whole manifest version 3.0 discussion where ad blocker extensions are struggling with these new restrictions. On Android, since we currently don't really do such a deep integration into the system, so we do the interaction, for example, with the vending machine over either QR codes or the NFC subsystem, we've not faced big problems there so far, actually.
Okay, so unless someone else wants to elaborate on that, I guess the next thing.
Anyway, let me just say, we also basically, the Android app is actually an F-Droid app, we should say.
Right.
It is in the F-Droid store. And when we went looking for developers, we basically looked at F-Droid developers. So Android is not the problem. Chromium has a problem with the Chrome store, and I should also say Mozilla is also a problem. They have a crazy review process. Had some very badly qualified reviewers that were unable to, get themselves the permissions to run a Docker image to do the build process. So Mozilla, these review processes for these closed stores are a real problem, and we really need to get people on into a more open and friendly ecosystem in the medium term.
Mm-hmm. Understandable. That's why I'm glad, at least for Firefox, you can sideload things. There is a way to do it on Chrome that I've taught people if they have to use Chrome, and I know how much of a big pain in the ass this is because you feel like a, you know, it's like not the most complex thing, but you know, for a lot of people, you feel like a hacker just doing it because of how ridiculous they make it.
It's going to get rid of the side-loading feature for Firefox. You will need a patched version that presumably some free software distributions are going to ship. But even there, you know, the side-loading on Firefox is likely to going to go away for most users.
Right. Again, especially.
Are particularly user-friendly, so to speak, in the end.
Yep, and that's, you know, again, unfortunately, when your market leader, you know, has a lot, like we've seen with Apple, where they get rid of features, and because they sell a lot, everyone follows them, and that's how it goes. So what was that? I'm trying to remember the second. Okay, so odd question, but I'm just curious because I can see both the legal problems with this, but I just want to ask. One of the more recent problems is something that DEF CON 2.1 has been focusing on is the activism around the restricting of sex work, both in the United States and globally, especially where in terms of legal situations, sex workers are often used as the sadly as the guinea pigs to test really horrible anti-privacy, pro-evasiveness legislator, because especially in the United States, no one cares about this demographic, so that's a way for them to be like, oh, you know, this piece of censorship, you know, went through because of them, now we can expand it and everyone's affected, and by the time everyone realizes, it's too late. It's one of our worst blind sides being a Puritan society. So my question is, like, again, this is like, that's why I don't see this as like drugs or anything, but could you see the Taler token and this whole system potentially be beneficial to sex workers, or is that still like a giant legal hurdle that just, you know, is annoying to deal with?
Well, not living in such a Puritan society, it doesn't affect us as directly here in Europe. Florian, you want to say something immediately?
Yeah, I also wanted to say that I'm not that familiar with the US legislation about this, but in general, while Thaler really prioritizes the like privacy aspects of customers, we also have some other data minimization properties. So for example, when you are somebody selling services and you enter into like a digital contract with a customer, by default, the actual contents of this contract and to some degree, not even the exact amount is directly laid open. So of course, then some auditor could come and in a way force the service provider to open their books, but this opening of books is not done by default, even for merchants or service providers.
The other thing I would add to maybe give you a better answer is we've currently now started first design work on the next Taler extension with the goal of allowing you to indicate that a coin that you are withdrawing is given to a person that is underage. So, you know, I have a kid, I could basically go and say, well, you know, I'm giving you some pocket money that you can use to spend stuff, but since you are 10 years old, sorry, products that are above the, you know, not age 10, you cannot buy with this. And the goal is that the merchant that sells products that are adult only or FSK 16 can basically say, you know, in order to buy this product, you have to prove to me in zero knowledge that your coin is tagged above 14. You know, so the merchant will only learn that the coin was for a person that was of sufficient age. And that way, merchants could satisfy age verification requirements without infringing further on the privacy of the users.
That's a really interesting, cool feature. Like, I've never seen that implemented. That's really cool. I'm excited to see that when it's finally able to show. So I guess a couple more questions. Here's a fun one, actually, I've been meaning to ask. So one of the cool things that I really like about Taler that really hit me is that, you know, usually when you see money systems, it's always like, here's a card or here's a wallet. And there's actually shockingly few that not only has setups for the consumer or user of the token or payment merchant system, but that the sellers, the merchants themselves, you have a whole, as I brought up here, like instructional of how to do the backend and API. Could you kind of detail about that, about like the merchant implementation of this whole system?
Well, one crucial thing that you have to think of when you build a payment system is onboarding of merchants, right? If you can give an app or a web extension, there's 4 or 5 platforms out there of relevance, and then you have basically all the 5 billion users on the planet that have access to, that you want to have access to. But we only need one exchange operator per currency domain, so that's also not too crazy. But in terms of merchants, you've got millions of merchants out there, and migrating all of them, that's basically going to be the big task if we want to make the system successful. And I can only pray that more people in the community will step up and help with this. But now, how do you make this as easy as possible? Well, what we did is we designed a backend that is basically speaking a REST API that we try to make as easy to understand as possible, while of course also providing all of the features that we have. And then you can take your existing merchant, be it a snack machine, be it a web page, and speak to that payment backend to do all of the crypto for you. And then the wallet will do some interactions directly with the backend. And typically what you have to do is you set up a contract with the backend saying, I want to sell this thing. And then the backend goes and says, okay, if you want to sell this thing, pass this information onto the browser or the Android phone. And then you can ask, has it been paid yet? Possibly using long polling. And if once it has been paid, you get told, yep, payment has gone through. You can now ship the product, or you can grant the customer a refund, or whatever you want to do once it has happened. So that's basically a REST API. And then we have set on top of that, we're in the process of setting an SPA single page app for management from the back office on top of this. And we, of course, also need to integrate this with the front end. So if you have a shopping cart system, you need to kind of take your shopping cart information, put this into a JSON request to the back end to create the order, and then allow us to process the payment. And again, the goal is that we don't want every merchant to deal with the cryptography. That should not be necessary. They should not have to understand the full protocol. All they should have to understand is a thin thing. Here's how I create an order. Here's how I make a refund. Here's how I can check if I have been paid. And those simple things are basically then done by the merchant backend and have to be integrated in the various front ends that exist to make the shopping possible with Taler.
So I would say I'm gonna roughly, if you don't mind, because again I don't want to waste any of your time. If you need to do something later or something, probably just about like 3 more or so questions. Are you all cool with that? Okay, that's fine. Trust me. Oh, I know that exact experience from watching RC3 this year. that was a whole little side tangent. That was a whole experience where there was nothing more bizarre of like in our time, Eastern Standard Time in the United States, waking up at 6 a.m. in the morning for like basically it felt like everyone who was watching this was like noon and they were fine. They just came back from walking their dog and I'm up at 6 a.m. And then like when we live streamed our reactions to that, what was always hilarious was that like everyone's partying because it's at night because they're still running this on like the German time zones, but for us it was like only 4 p.m. So it's like we're seeing people like with like nightsticks and like all this crazy stuff that you would normally like see at like 9 p.m. or midnight, but like over here it's like 4 p.m. the sun is out. So that I know your pain. So I apologize for that, but I'm really happy that you're here, and I hope this has been just say in advance an enjoyable experience. Thank you, just in advance for coming out for this. So I guess the next roughly 3 questions. Just lost my train of thought slightly there. Since Taler has a huge integration with the GNU Net to the point where it's where from what I can see, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I probably am, that's basically a part of GNU Net. What has it been like working with the core GNU Net project, and are there any like features you're still waiting on from the GNU Net project to be updated to progress, or are you like finding new things that have upgraded GNU Net? Like, can you tell me that relationship?
I work very well with myself.
I know that this is one of your things. It's just, yeah.
I'm also the maintainer of GNUnet, or one of the two co-maintainers of GNUnet, so it's a bit difficult to question the collaboration here. Florian might say something about working with me being difficult, but then I'm not sure if it's...
I didn't.
Anyway, and so if we need anything on any changes on the GNUnet side, and we have needed a couple, we just do those. And the same applies to other GNU packages. You know, we have had changes in libgcrypt, changes in the GNU-lib microHP, changes in GNUnet. It's very easy to work with other GNU packages. It's after all, the GNU project we're supposed to work together, and I have never had any conflicts in collaboration with other GNU packages when we needed something for Taler or other packages we're maintaining.
Yeah. I should clarify. That question. That was basically poor marketing on my part, I guess, but it was a really funny answer. I know you're one of the GNU folks. I didn't mean as terms as like collaboration in terms of like the people working on it. I just meant more of like, you know, you're working on Taler and you're like, oh, we want to like implement this feature, and then you realize, oh, there's something in GNUnet that, you know, in order to do that we have to up. Like I was more of like working between like two different kind of umbrella but related software projects and jumping back and forth, not necessarily the teamwork involved with the people.
One thing we should maybe clarify is that Taler uses a very small, slim part of GNUnet. We're using, you know, some cryptographic functions. We're using some configuration parsing functions, some event loops, some database access layers, but we do not use the actual peer-to-peer functionality. As we said at the very beginning, Taler is not a decentralized system, right? So it's not decentralized. GNUnet is completely decentralized. So that's, you know, where we don't use GNUnet is the moment it goes to the peer-to-peer networking, and that's very good because that still needs a lot of work on the GNUnet side. And the other stuff, you know, whenever we needed something, we just implemented it. And certainly, I would say both projects have benefited from this.
Awesome. So, and this is not what you think. I'm just thinking this might be a little bit of a controversial question. It's not what you think. I'm just curious because this is kind of like a duh, and I feel like I know the answer to this question, but it never. It's just something that they have to be that has to be said. So one of the arguments I've always heard over the years between, again, I feel like even though there's concrete definitions of like what free software and FOSS and stuff is, people, you know, it's like the word hacker, people have like their own, whether they're right or wrong, like ideas of like what it is, right? And so something that I've often heard is like, there's a lot of people who think when they think of free software, they think it's not just software, it's an extension to like, you know, not even like freedom in terms of legal stuff in software, but like they're like thinking, you know, freedom of speech, freedom, like complete freedom of speech, complete freedom of choice, like the ultra end of, and again, the United States terms are kind of warped on this, but that's what I'm used to, like the extreme end of liberté, or what we would call U.S. libertarianism, where like, you know, people are just sort of like, why do we have seatbelts, that sort of thing. And, you know, and the thing about what Taler, which I do appreciate a lot, is that, again, while the tokens, you know, that's what's being, you know, masked, so you have like a sort of like security on the user end, same thing with the markets, but that it's still auditable by, you know, government entities and is responsible. I don't know if you've ever had this brought up, but like what, I'm trying to figure out how to word this correctly because I don't want to word this wrong. Like what, like for the folks who may say, hey, like I thought, it's not open, free software and like, you know, GNU and stuff is supposed to be like freedoms with everything, but I see all of this like auditing and government stuff, so it's not truly private. That's not actually liberté, and that's not like open and free. So I just want to ask again, this is not to be derogatory. It's like, what would be your answer to people who bring that up as a question, if you understand the question?
The French Revolution said liberté, égalité, fraternité. And these are, it's very important to understand that one cannot go too overboard on one of them and still retain a reasonable system. And so if you think you can have freedom without any kind of government oversight or involvement, it tends to deteriorate towards a tyrannism where the tyrant has all the freedoms because he has all the money and all the power, and you fail to put some checks and balances on that.
Agreed.
And so a bit of égalité and fraternité are important. And one equalizer could be in practice these days isn't the tax system, where people who are very, very rich are forced to give a little bit of their money to those that are more poor. That gets us towards egalitarianism. I'm not saying we need to make it completely equal, but the current inequality is a bit stark. And the same thing is that we should all be very happy to pay taxes to have hospitals and vaccinations and police and other things that are providing us with some limited level of security. Because again, if you don't have any of things, you don't have courts, you don't have police, you don't have military, you don't have hospitals, well, then your freedom is not going to be very much worth to you in the end. So this fraternity, where we basically say the state is we're going to use the state as a mechanism to help our fellows so that they don't get sick, and when they don't get sick, we might not get sick. This is also an important aspect of a civil society. So we need a balance here, and Taler can contribute towards that balance.
I completely agree with that personally. Not saying that in front of DEF CON or DEF CON 201, but yeah, I agree with that 100%. That's why I wanted to ask that question, because particularly with the way the United States libertarian system is, that unfortunately does come up. So I wanted to make sure. That's again why I'm glad we're talking to Europeans. They're familiar with it. Speaking of which, so just want to let everyone know in chat that if you have any questions, these are literally going to be like the last questions. Then we're going to try the we're going to attempt to try the add-on. I don't know if I'm going to have a live audience for that, but we're gonna try to do the whole demo system with the code. I will say I'm probably going to do with permission. I mean, it's just weird to say, but with permission from GNU, from you folks at GNU Taler, just because I respect your project, that I'm going to look into probably doing a future episode to see, like, again, I don't know if it works or not. That's not to diss you folks, but I don't know if it works or not. But some of this stuff is interesting to implement. I might do a separate thing where we revisit GNU Taler and I try to set up the merchant system. But that's not what we're going to do today. We're just going to try the demo at the end. But I guess the question's so.
Give us feedback in the end.
Exactly. That's one of the things that, again, I'm not the best coder or anything, but apparently that's one of the things I'm really useful for, is I can use stuff, and apparently just stuff breaks in very useful ways when I just use them normally. So but so kind of completely unrelated to all of this, and also unrelated because, again, we're not talking about the drama. That's going to be something completely separate and everything. I'm just curious about where you're located. Just sort of like, in general, just as like a relaxing question, what's been the situation up where you folks are, like, just like socially, politically, like, are your headspace fine? Just curious on air. That's an odd question.
I would put it this way: European governments have reacted very slowly to COVID, but not quite as insanely as yours. And as,
that's an
hackers,
understatement.
we are in the extremely privileged position that home office kind of happened already long before COVID. So it doesn't really change all that much in our lives compared to everybody else's who has, let's say, more normal jobs. So we are in a very privileged position in this planet of being in a system with good health care, good public health care, good insurance, no risk of losing our jobs. So given this privileged position we are in, we can take the overall situation in the world with quite a bit of calm still these days.
Yeah, no, what you just said, I know you're I guess, I don't know if you're trying to be nice, but that is like the understatement of the century, basically. I will describe it that our country, the entire house of cards fell apart. Like, if people thought it fell apart before, it really fell apart during all of that, which is why personally I used to have a saying, because I used to have people outside of this country constantly ask, particularly Western, Eastern Europeans, about, like, as someone who's grown up here.
Again, you're again looking at, you're seeing the grass is green on the other
yes,
side.
Yes. I know. I'm just yeah.
Look at how quickly vaccinations are happening here in Europe. You will think snails are fast enemies.
I've seen that. I've also seen the squabbles, and of course, like, never forget, like, just like how, again, these are technically our parents, how crazy the UK is. So I'm very much aware of all that. I'm just trying to relay from our side, from our experience, and
That's why I think you have to be always careful with criticizing yourself or criticizing others. One only has very incomplete pictures about these things. But I think it's fair for me and Florian to speak that we are personally quite unaffected by the situation so far.
Yeah, totally understandable. I also can kind of relate to, because again, I think I also understand like the whole like the that we're in a privileged position, which is why I have to work for stuff, because I'll just say from my own experience, because I don't know if you've ever been here, but like New Jersey, in our opinion, it's gotten a lot better over the recent years with the new government changes, and it's obviously not perfect. There's still issues, like not even COVID related, but just in general. But it was so weird, again, that like we would see stuff and there would be some issues and we would be grappling with them, and then we would literally look to our just alone our two neighboring states, and like we felt like we were like next to war zones by comparison. Basically anything, again, like we know the grass is greener thing, but like we thought whatever minor problems, what seeming like major problems we had were bad, and then we like immediately looked at our neighbors, and it really put into like context with just that alone, like the scale of everything happened just even locally on this corner of the United States. So we very much know that. Speaking of which, odd question, but kind of needs to be asked. Just came to me. Let's quickly talk about the topic no one wants to talk about, because this is the other stupid thing in terms of finance, which is Brexit. Where just as a recap, basically the UK and all of their weird factions, part of their empire that doesn't really exist anymore, were used to part of the European Union, and basically they wanted out and have planned and put into legal action and done stuff to get out. Has that, or will that impact? Is that like one of the hurdles for GNU Taler with that sort of stuff happening, or is this like a system where this is something that like people can use, where despite this happening, we actually this is completely usable? If that makes any sense.
Great Britain was never part of the European currency area, so they were part of
Right,
the
they still had
European Union,
pounds.
but they did
Yeah.
not share the euro. So in that respect, for the payment system, them leaving has basically no effect. They wouldn't have been able to use it in Great Britain before, and you can't use it afterwards if you deploy on the European continent, and vice versa. You could deploy Taler in Great Britain, but that wouldn't help Europeans for the rest of Europe, and vice versa. So I don't think the Brexit situation has changed anything there. The only thing we can say is, of course, that if countries that are in the Eurozone and want to introduce a different currency, be it a parallel one to the existing euro or leave the Eurozone, they always have a logistics problem of, how do I print $1 billion worth of currency and distribute them to my population on typically short notice. We've both experienced this in India when they went for demonetization, where the government decided to void all of the equivalent in America would be all of the $20 bills would be voided overnight. Good luck.
Yeah.
And then afterwards you start printing new ones. So those kind of situations where governments decide that they need to rapidly redistribute cash might be facilitated by the introduction of digital cash. But otherwise, these kind of things, I don't think they impact the payment systems at all.
I should have probably clarified that. I wasn't more thinking of, because this is every time I look at the UK, they're not necessarily worried about I'm not thinking of the token system or their currency, even though that does get affected, but more of like the merchants and the e-commerce have been going through hell from what I understand. That's why I was more curious about. But you're
logistics problem with not being in a free trade zone anymore.
Right. No, that's why I wanted to bring that up. So I just wanted to, again, my whole thing is sometimes I ask stupid questions just because, we get awesome answers like that. So thank you for answering that. And I guess before we try the demo, and then we're going to at Twitch, we're going to distribute so DLive has this whole thing from Lemons. We always distribute it on the show. It's like a token. It's not like any sort of like it's like tokens, like the same way when you have a mobile game and you have tokens. It's one of those weird things. Not gambling, thank God, in this instance. And so I'm going to ask this question, and then we're going to try to run the demo that's on the website. And I think they're good. And the last two questions is basically one. I guess what's the immediate stuff that you're doing right now for the future with Taler? Like what's like immediately next, like in, like, I guess what, like the next couple of months, and like what's the first like real long-term goal that you want to hit immediately next, starting from now?
Well, there are a couple of things that are kind of immediate. There is working with a German bank to try to get a regulatory approval and integration with their actual banking system on their side, and getting that tested and through a prototype stage. That's immediate. The other immediate thing we're hacking on is the backup and recovery functionality. We have there a separate piece of software that is basically using a form of secret splitting, but not Shamir, where you can distribute a secret across a bunch of providers that do not even learn who you are, and that you can reassemble eventually by convincing each of these providers that you are the authorized person to recover the data. That's the Anastasis system we had mentioned a couple of times before. So finishing that and integrating that with the Taler wallet, those will be some of the most important next steps. Polishing the merchant backend interface is happening. So lots of things are basically happening in parallel. And well, we will also need to do some fundraising in the very near future, simply because trying to have a team of people that are actually paid to do this means that they want to have some decent salary to eat. So that's also going to happen in the near future. And then once we have the regulatory approval in Europe, I hope that we will be able to focus on integrating the system with many, many merchants, and yeah.
Awesome. And then I guess my final question, which I always ask people who are guests on any streams or in-person things we do, outside of, and I can see the slide here, outside of obviously the GNU Taler website and the hands-on resources that you've posted, is there any way where if people are interested in contributing or want to pick your brain on something, is there like any other things you want to feature or ways to contact you that you're willing to share?
Well, there is, of course, our bug tracker.
Perfect.
And there should be plenty of contact references on the main list. There is a mailing list that's hosted by the GNU project. So you can subscribe to our mailing list where sometimes interesting technical discussions happen, sometimes announcements are made, and of course sometimes people just ask more questions. So you can also subscribe to our mailing list, taler@gnu.org. Subscription is standard mailman. So that would be also a good way to contact us.
Awesome. Well, unless you want to do any shout outs or bring something out again, this is something I've had this idea for a while, and it was really awesome to reach out to you folks and to get you to come on and talk so passionately about your project and be able to explain it and pick your brain on it. This was honestly really fantastic. Again, the chat's basically like yay and like thank you. This was a great honor to have you on here and explain your project, and I hope this was, despite the audio frustrations earlier, which trust me confused the heck out of me too, but we got them fixed. That I hope this was a great experience for you. Good luck with the Taler project, and again, just thank you for being on Crypto Barons and explaining to us filthy crypto people about why your project is not blockchain and crypto and all the awesome stuff that you're doing in the free software Libre e-commerce world.
Thank you for having us. It was great.
Thank you.
And
good evening.
Yes, and again, it's really late there, so if you want to leave the big blue button, I do not blame you because we're basically going to try the demo. Plus, if you leave, you don't have to see me cringe. If you want to stay around, that's up to you, but we're going to do that, and then we're going to do the normal wind down the show. So once again, thank you. I'll send a follow-up email, and have a great twilight morning. Or a great day when you folks wake up. Yep. If you guys sleep, because project development. Okay, so what we're gonna do now, and this should be interesting because as they said, I'm gonna turn off the mic here. Yes, awesome. We are going to now do something really awesome. Is we're going to try the website demo for GNU Taler. To kind of just show like the easy, like supposedly the easy integration. You know, again, this is not blockchain, this is not cryptocurrency, and one of the reasons why I do this on the show is, you know, again, we're gonna have an entire episode where we talk about like older like digital cash before Bitcoin and the Satoshi paper and stuff came up. So, you know, and again, we're all looking at it in terms of tech. We do again talk a bit about finances, a bit about you know, social stuff, philosophy, as you kind of saw a bit earlier when I was asking about the Libre questions, you know, ethical things. But we're mainly looking at the tech. And again, even, you know, even though all of this will eventually rate to, even if it's comparing and contrasting a blockchain tech or a cryptocurrency tech to a tech that's not even that. Again, we did all ones about scams, and we're probably going to do one about, you know, this versus normal banks and things. But like, that's why I want to have things on to like, you know, broaden people's mind. I don't want, you know, this is how you get Bitcoin bros and snake oil salesmen and uninformed consumers and users, is that I don't want people to go out there and like all they just hear these buzzwords like, you know, blockchain, cloud, serverless, mitigation, you know, high security, and you know, freaking, you know, atomic swapped it, and no one explains anything, and it just sounds all foo-foo. And then this is how they scam you and, you know, do other awful things to your life, your code, your finances, and your well-being. So, like, that's the point of this show. So I will say, what we're going to do is that, again, as I said, we're going to try the demo, and then after the demo, I would say about, like, 10:03, 10:05, I'm going to distribute a bunch of lemons for anyone watching on DLive. So if you stuck around this long, awesome. And on Twitch, we're going to create another stream. Hopefully the Red Team Village is still streaming. If not, we'll find an awesome person to stream on Twitch. But again, thank you. And also, if you were curious about this, because I forgot to bring this up earlier, those things that you see is what's called an incent reward. We don't make any money off of it or anything. It's just a cool way for basically in 23 seconds, you're going to see a QR code and a little like typing code. If you go to get.incent.com, you can download their wallet. You can scan that small QR code or put that code in manually. They're all DC 201 somethings. And you get a little bit of a cryptocurrency called Incent. And that cryptocurrency you can basically trade with pretty much every single cryptocurrency, meaning you can build up Incent and then trade it for Litecoin, Bitcoin, Monero, and then pull that out as fiat cash. So whether you get Bitcoin, you know, a cryptocurrency, cryptocurrency, or you get fiat money by exchanging the Incent for either cryptocurrency or fiat money. It's just a cool way to essentially, we're literally giving away free money essentially for just watching our stream. And again, we don't get any kickbacks. Like, we're being super honest about this because we always are on this show and with DEF CON 201. We're not getting any kickbacks. This is not like a Ponzi scheme as far as we know. If we find that out, we're going to apologize and explain and quit immediately. This is just a cool way of doing it. So that's, I just want to explain that's what all those pop-ups are. Which is why I think I forgot to write Incent on our DLive. So that was my fault for doing that the episode, because, you know, I did this step early, but, you know, you forget things. So we're going to go over to the GNU Taler website, and we're going to go out of, like, the API stuff. And I also want to mention again that we have a GitHub widget. And if you go there, or if you go to our GitHub, and you can go to our GitHub by either going to, this is where I start doing the spiel again. You can go to our website at defcon201.org right here. And it has the link to our GitHub there. If you want to check that out, plus our other social medias, here's the link tree to all of our social medias. Or if you're on Twitch right now, you can just scroll down and you'll see GNU Taler Wallet. You can click on that and it'll open it in a separate window, so you can watch the stream and look at the code at the same time, and you can look at all the wallet stuff. So if you're very curious on just what the wallet is like, that's it there. Again, I'm probably going to revisit GNU Taler and try to see if we can get the current state at that time, the Android app running, and to see if we can implement the merchant system. We'll do a lot of code. But for this, because again, I wanted this to be the interview, I wanted them to express themselves and explain their project, and I think they did a fantastic job. So once again, even though they're not here, bravo to them, and it was great to have them on the show and to be on DEF CON 201. And again, when an email, I'm dead serious, they were like the nicest, easiest, like folks to talk to. You know, we had some awesome guests like for our meetings and stuff. They're awesome too and easy to talk with. But like this is the first time we've reached out particularly to a GNU project, and they were like really easy and on point and everything. Just super nice. As you can tell, they were very grateful, super nice, and very European. So yeah, we're gonna try the demo here and click on the button. And if I remember how this worked last time, what it is you have to install, and this is why I'm going to put this out of full screen mode, you have to install an extension, and then that interfaces with the shop. And again, they said they did change things. So we're going to go through this step by step. It's only going to take a couple of minutes. I would say actually probably like 10:08, 10:10 we'll do this. So we'll wrap up. So first of all, what we're going to do is, this is the part where I'm glad that they're gone. Maybe they're still watching, but I'm glad that they're gone. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, no, I have to do this because one of the biggest problems with doing just browser view is, like, for example, if I click on any of these icons, you won't, I just did that right there. You don't see what opened, right? And so basically I have to do a display capture. Another thing I'm going to do is the only blocking thing outside of a YouTube block that I have on this platform is uBlock Origin, which if you don't have it, I highly recommend installing that if you don't have it and you're not on like the Tor browser or even like the Brave browser if you're using that for some reason. So I'm going to turn that off just so that hopefully the communication will go smoothly on this. So I'm going to reload the page just in case. It's off just for the demo. Everything should be hunky-dory, provided everything runs. So I'm going to do display capture. So you're going to see my entire setup here. It's going to go freaky, and then you're going to see the entire setup. Now, I do want to warn, for anyone who's like Super Libre and FOSS stuff, basically trigger warning, we did not want to use this platform, but unfortunately it's the only thing where, against, we had to choose, you know, we have to have a compromise. It's like what they said about earlier with the Liberté. I just saw you streaming, yes. Tesla and Bitcoin. No, that's a whole other episode where we basically just get to make fun of Elon Musk for 2 hours, or basically what our normal live stream meetings are. But thank you, N Commander. Also, again, just saying, we're not talking about the controversy today. That's going to be a future thing. This is, again, we're just focusing on this because to me, just doing that would be a disservice to this awesome team that, again, did not have any, like, they're not, you know, they're not the overlords. It's kind of like, you know, Trump is an a-hole. You know, if you want to hate on Trump and his family. Like, don't bother the maid that works at the Trump hotel. Like, don't set her on fire. She's just trying to make an honest living. It's probably the only job that she had. She's not the reason why all the Americans died due to the lack of vaccines, or, you know, all of our rights stripped away, and the reason why no one can open umbrellas and crap. So, yes, but I was going to bring up, if you are interested in looking at this, and he might type in chat, you can go to N Commander's YouTube channel, and he does have a video about it. So again, we're not going to bring that up today, but if you do want to know, and it's really itching at you that I'm not talking about it, go to N Commander's channel. It's a brilliant thing. Go check that out. It's really well thoughtful, done, very presentational, all of that sort of stuff. And you can also probably read the chat. So, and again, you're fine. Again, I just didn't want to do like trolling and stuff. We just want to focus on this. So again, we're going to go into display capture mode. So for people who are Super Libre and stuff, we had to make a choice between, it's like us having both a Twitter and a Mastodon. Do we want, you know, our values versus what works? And unfortunately with this instance, we had to lean with what works. So I just want a trigger warning. When we go in display capture, you're going to see the obvious thing, and that's that. So here we go. Display capture mode. Let's turn off browser here. Display capture mode. Whoa! Okay, so now that we're here, you should be able to actually see the extensions here. So the steps here, we're going to read them ahead. Install the Taler wallet. So we're going to install the wallet from the installation page. It's only going to take one click because, again, so I'll show us off. Wait, I remember last time, if this works the same way how I did this like 3 years ago or so, 2 or 3 years ago with GNU Taler, as we maybe remember previous episodes where we installed an extension that's called MetaMask. And this basically, again, this is the password. We're not going to log into it because of today, even though the Foxhead follows the cursor around. This is basically an extension that you can put in your browser. It's on Firefox and Chrome, and obviously all Chrome derivatives, aka every other browser for some reason. And oh, I just realized my thing. I booped the snoot. Boop the snoot. Boop the snoot. But anyhow, So this extension, MetaMask, it's really common. There's other extensions like this, but it's probably the most common, most implemented, and most popular extension, to be honest. And what it is an extension for your browser. It basically upgrades your browser to technically become Web 3 or Web 3.0. I know these stupid buzzwords, but basically what it means is that your browser now can directly communicate with online blockchain implementation and have wallets. And that's what MetaMask basically is. It's like an Ethereum wallet. They have an extension that can talk directly to your web browser. And that's how the interaction works. That's how we're able to do Gitcoin. That's how we're able to look at Polkadot and other things passive. So we're going to get into more MetaMask. And the reason why I'm bringing up MetaMask is because, if I remember correctly, it's going to be very similar where they're going to see like a T in the corner or a logo, and that's going to be the Taler wallet, and that's going to allow us to communicate directly with it so we can do the merchant stuff and exchange tokens as part of this demo. So after the installation, you may ask to grant the browser-based Taler wallet additional permissions. This is our guinea pig browser, so it's fine. These permissions will allow the wallet to automatically open a page if asked for a Taler payment. Regardless of permissions you grant, the wallet never transmits information about you or browser history to everyone. Of course, because it is free software and it's a FOSS platform, you can go look at the code and see that for yourself. So the second thing is, as it says in this demo, you're going to pay using Kudos, which is imaginary currency. I would imagine the final version, this is going to be the actual Taler tokens that are, again, kind of like how money used to be backed up by gold. This is backed up and directly represents your actual fiat currency in the country that you're currently in. So to withdraw the Kudos coins, you must first create an account at our bank. And you sign up, you just pick a username and a password. I don't care because it's demo purposes, even though just for security sanitation reasons, I'm probably just going to turn off the browser for half a second. When you create an account, you'll be credited 100 Kudos. And then your web interface will authorize the transfer of that. So you'll see the transfer from the browser to the Taler wallet extension. And then there's two demo merchants. One is an essay store where you can pay Kudos to read individual chapters from RMS's book. And then there's one, a donation website where you can basically pay the different people working on projects using the Kudos token, which would eventually probably be in the final version of the Taler token. And two, you can check the money flow on it. And then the merchant will be able to do a survey. And of course, if there's any bugs with this that you can find, you can reach out to them. So I'm going to quickly look in chat and then continue. Okay, nothing in chat. Good. Let's get to this. So first, we're going to install. So that's wallet.taler. Yep, right here. I'm actually going to post the link in the chat here. So again, everything's going to look a little funky, just for if you want to follow along and play the home game. So we have here, there is a Google Chrome and Chromium extension. And as I said, they noticed, hey, we don't have Chrome because F them. They also have Opera, and they have one for the Android app. That will be interesting to check up. And there's the one for F-Droid. So if you're curious to want to check this out, again, we'll look at the Android app and try to do the merchant implementation, even if it fails in the near future. But for now, we're running Microsoft Mozilla Firefox 57 over. It's install wallet. So we click on that, and it should do the XBI. So it's downloading it, and it's like, "Do you sure you want to install this?" So we're gonna click to install. Add. That's a little T logo that's gonna appear in the corner, probably next to the MetaMask. So we're adding that. And now just open to a new page, letting us know that we successfully installed. And it says, all that. We're going to allow it in private mode. As you can see here, yep, there was supposed to be like a survey thing there, but I guess that unfortunately skipped. So that's weird. That kind of happened a little bit too fast. But as you can see up here, we have a little Taler widget. When you click on it, it says you have no balance to show, and you have balance, history, your settings, which is automatically open while based on page content. And you also have debug here where you'll get the wallet tab. You can reset the whole thing and reset. I guess the main extension project is the Chrome version, which is why even though we're using Firefox, this is reload Chrome extension, even though this is a Firefox extension, it's the XSI file. So we're going to go back, and now we're going to go to the bank here, which I'm going to post in the chat. So again, we're almost done with this. I would say, I'm sorry I keep pushing this back, but around between like 10:15 and 10:20 we will do this. So that's the fake bank where we're going to get the Kudos from. So we're going to click on that. And now we have a registration form. So just, this doesn't matter because it's a demo, but just for, you know, we want to be like, you know, security proper conscious people. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the display capture. You get to look at a lovely blank screen, and we're going to put our thing. So I will say that we're going to use DC201 as our name, and then our password will be, let me just think of something random. Pork. Yeah, that will work. You can probably guess it, but I'm just doing this for like sanitary reasons. Again, normally I wouldn't say the password out loud, but that's way. And just to absolutely make sure that I'm doing this right, let's do this like this. Copy pasta. And normally, if I was doing this, honestly, I would load up an awesome program which you can find on privacytools.io called KeyPass XE. It's basically a password manager and generator that stores everything locally, so you don't have to connect to the internet, be online. You just have to put in your password and or your optional hardware token to unlock it, and it randomly generates passwords for you of any sort of length and all that stuff. That's what I normally use, but just for demos, we're just doing this. So we've now signed up for the bank. I'm going to turn on the display capture as the probably last instant reward of this episode goes up. And so now we are here, and registration successful. We have 100 kudos at this fictional bank here, right? And this is cool because we actually don't have to go out in order to go in. I think we have, yeah, we have the whole kit and caboodle here. So let's get some kudos out. So we have 100 in the bank, and so what we're going to do is the default's 5. Let's see how many we can pull out. Let's just do a huge chunk. We're going to pull 20 kudos, what would probably eventually be the Taler token, out here. And this is actually where you could probably choose if there were multiple different token types that you would use during the encryption side. Again, this is all backed up, as I said, by your bank fiat currency. So we're going to take 20 out. Let's just double check the wallet here. And then we're going to click Start Withdrawal. And it says this page has a Taler action, so you notice there's a QR code for the mobile wallet. There's a link if ultimately everything fails, but as you can see, the Taler extension prompted, and we're going to open that because we triggered this. It'd be interesting to test the security between the extension talking to the browser and back. You know, again, they need to look for bugs. So like if I was trying to test security, I would do that as a vector point. And it's not saying if they did this good or bad. That's just how I think as someone who explores software. So we're going to do open. And digital cash withdrawal. You're about to withdraw that. The exchange will be used here. And we're going to accept this. And we also have the options to choose a different exchange provider or cancel. So we're going to accept. Open the wallet to hopefully see at the same time. And yep. And again, because there's a little bit of a fee here. Right now it's pending that there's 19.8 kudos, so it's not exactly 20, because just like with cryptocurrency, there's a little bit of fee, but you notice it's super low. It's not like when you try to move, like, God forbid, something like you try to move like 20 Satoshis and you only end up with like 5 Satoshis left because of how big and massive and popular Bitcoin is, like in all of that gas fee. The gas fee, if you want to put it in perspective, or basically a transaction fee if you were using a normal bank for Taler, as they say, is really low. So that's why it was literally by like fractions of a point. So now it's doing a verification process. Now, obviously, they're not going to use CAPTCHA, but now we're going to solve the most difficult CAPTCHA I think I have ever seen. This is like the most difficult thing the free software movement could throw at us, which is, what is 9 plus 1? Now, this is kind of an issue because I'm an American. I don't know how to do the maths, so I have to really think here. So there's the 9, and 9 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then there's 1, which is 1. So you have the 9, and you have the 1. And you're going to put them together. And then you do the remainder. Cross-reference that with pi. All right, we're going to try this answer, and we hope that this works. Hopefully I'm not too American enough to fail at this question, you know. So we're going to do that. And withdrawal was successful. So it did withdraw into it. It might take a bit. Well, it says that we have the, even though, okay, so here's a fun bug. Even though it says 0 here, it does say down here that we have the kudos incoming. And if we look at the history, we have the withdrawal pending. So it might take a bit. And again, as I said, they're still working out kinks. So, oh, here it just showed up. So 19.8, again, it took off 2 points out of the 20 for kudos. Took out 0.2, 0.2, which again is a lot better than trying to send 2 Satoshis and end up with half of 1 Satoshi. And, you know, that's not unique to just a Taler. You know, there are like cryptocurrencies that are blockchain technology. That do have lower gas fees and stuff. And the gas fees, that's what they call what would normally be a transaction fee if you were doing banking. So I don't feel like doing the essay shop, so let's look at the donations. And we're going to now use some of this 20 kudos to donate. So we have different projects here. So we can either donate to GNU Net, we could donate to GNU Taler, or we could donate to Tor. Now, considering I've had mostly a good relationship with Tor, just personally, and I've used the Tor browser. You've seen the Tor browser on the show. I personally use it for myself. And it's not that, you know, GNU.net, cool project, very confusing, but cool, interesting idea. Taler, absolutely love it. But again, if it's Taler and Tor, and also just because of the recent stuff with Tor that I think is awesome, project and otherwise, we're going to donate to Tor. So we're going to select Tor, and then we can choose the amount of kudos. Well, so we have 20. Let's give them, again, we love Tor here at DEF CON 201. We actually, if you go to our social media link that we have in the chat, we actually do have a we do have, and you can see it on our stream, it's just fuzzy. We do have a .onion, so you not only can you check us on Tor, but you can check us through our .onion, and that .onion not only is its own infrastructure, meaning when you click on the blog, it goes to a .onion blog. When you click on the videos to watch on, it goes to those videos. But they're all .onions. They're all on the Tor network directly. They're not just .coms being processed through Tor. But if particularly you go to our Tor URL that's in our that Linktree link, and you click on partners, we have our own unique list of not only like the DEF CON version, .onion versions of various DEF CON stuff, but we also have our own list of like, hey, if you're completely new on Tor and you want to do things like write notes or write a blog or store cryptocurrency or look up cool technology projects, we have like a total beginners list for all of that, like some of basically our friends and cool stuff. So we're going to donate 10 of these kudos that we have because we took out 20, and because of the gas fee, or aka the transaction fee, we have 19.8. We're going to do 10. So as an American doing math, that we should have 9.8 left after this. And you know, we could be total Tor and be anonymous, but screw it, we want to let everyone know we are the not deathcore. I just made up a music genre. We are the, you know, we like putting our name everywhere because we're New Jersey loudmouths. So we're gonna let them know. So we're gonna donate 10 kudos to Tor on here. We're gonna click the donate button. Open the tab here. So select payment. Since this is an example of a checkout page on a web store. Previous page you created the shopping cart and detailed what product you want to buy. So if you were going to even do donations, it's basically like a shopping setup. As Taler is not universally used, we expect merchants offer various payment options. Continue with December, just select the Taler option. So, you know, you can pay different people on here, but as I said, Taler default select. Problem there, you never, a big bane of free software and just like privacy good practices, never choose defaults. So we're moving forward on that. So as you can see here, we have a Taler action prompt. Again, we have the even bigger QR code if you're using the mobile version, or click the link. We're going to open that action and see payment, and it's just confirming here. We're going to click confirm payment. Reopen the tab there, and instantly, like it's just blink, it just did. It went from 19.8 to 9.8. That was the 10, and there's our receipt. You know, thank you, DEF CON 201, for donating 10 kudos to Tor. And then it gives us an online order identification number as a receipt. And then we can actually share that link with people. Actually, I don't know what's going to happen when I click this. Let's find out. Or maybe I open it in a new tab. Okay, the link doesn't work apparently. And it didn't open a new window either. So yeah, it didn't work. But now we're going to go, I guess we're going to kind of do the tipping survey here. So it says, please participate in our survey about payment system. Which payment system do you prefer, Taler or Visa? You know, again, they did such a good thing with the project that even though I do have a Visa card and I don't really have many problems with it, when I actually have money, looking at you, Trump that made me lose all my money. Let's just choose Teller. We're going to humble them a bit. Oh, and this just shows you that you can tip people. So again, it actually brought that up. So we're going to send a tip. I don't know how much it's going to take out of the 9.8, but we're going to confirm that. Again, the merchant is offered. Oh, they're offering us a tip. So they're tipping us 0.9 kudos via the exchange. So we're going to accept the tip, just the tip. And now we should see this transaction through. So we should be seeing a 0.8. That should round it out to 10 something if this actually works. And it's okay. Yep, and it did. So 10.7. That's what we were given here. So yeah, that was the whole demo. That's how that whole thing worked. And again, this is GNU Taler, and I wanted to show this because again, while it's not a blockchain, it's not cryptocurrency. We wanted to use cryptocurrency and blockchain technology to contrast of here's an entirely different type of payment system to a cryptocurrency blockchain that's, you know, has a kind of a mix of different features where it has encryption at the base level, but it can still be tax audited. It's both legal and Libre. It's free software. It's FOSS, but it's also, you know, private and malleable. You know, it's just all this sort of thing. And so this episode was trying to use that to compare and contrast. So I'm going to go back to face mode here because that was basically our episode. And again, I'm sorry for all the audio issues early on in the beginning, but thanks for everyone being patient. Once again, I want to thank the two representatives from let's type this, from GNU Taler for coming out. Again, they've been, even with all the recent craziness going on, they've been super nice. They've been super professional and everything. And you saw, like, you know, especially with their fun Europeanness, like how much, you know, we were like the type of discussions we were having during that interview was kind of the same discussions we were having when we were typing an email. So we're very happy on Crypto Barons and DEF CON 201 that they showed up and they got to passionately talk about their project, and we learned a lot of cool, interesting things. Like I'm still flabbergasted by, like, you know, because that's something I've been wanting to bring up on the show is how like restrictive like India has been, particularly when it comes to not just cryptocurrency systems but with finance and payment stuff in general, because they have to deal with a lot of bad corruption stuff. And so like I didn't know that Taler basically sidesteps that because of the way the token system works. So right now we're going to drop off a bunch of lemons, and then you're going to listen to some music, and we're going to raid. So if you are watching on DLive, this is your moment here where we're going to go and do the distributing. So hopefully you'll get a bunch of lemons. And again, thank you for the people on DLive who followed. We are literally now only 8 followers away from our 100 follower goal, and then we can apply to be a crypto superstar. And I can do a lot more with not only just Crypto Barons, but just with the DLive count in general. So can't wait to reach that goal. Thank you for that. Thank you all for watching. Again, thank you for the folks that, and note we specifically are saying this, GNU Taler, that team, for coming out and talking about their project. The project was really awesome. If you want to find out more information about me and the show, and you want to check out blockchain, why my hair's nuts and everything, you can go to our website at the bottom at defcon201.org. And you can also go to our link tree, which is still in chat, for all of our social media. We are on one of our big ones is Twitter at defcon21nj, and we're also on Instagram and GitHub, where you can see some of the GNU Taler wallet code that's free and available to look at. It's so hard to not say open source. What do you call it? Challenge. You know, we're on, we have our own .onion URL, we're on Minds, we're on Mastodon, we're on all sorts of different things. So you basically have no excuse keeping up to date with us. So we're going to look at we are currently looking at the Twitch wall, and we're going to go raid a channel. So as I try to attempt to pathetically, I probably should do this beforehand, load up the music. We're going to outro with music, and if you're on Twitch, stay around. You're going to probably see something cool, bizarre, or both. Probably technology related. Can't guarantee probably technology related. And I can say again, Crypto Barons happens every second and fourth Saturday of every month. So then we're going to end up in next month, April, which is special for me because I get older than in April. So the next two episodes will be on the 10th of April and on the 24th of April, which is the day after I get old. And I can immediately tell you that, remember that episode where when we had to cover NFTs, I was like, fuck, and I had to delay that? I can guarantee that unless something new and stupid happens, April 10th, we are finally going to look at a topic that I've been struggling to try to do forever, where we're going to finally talk about master nodes. What are they? And how to completely set one up through terminal. And we're going to look at code, and we're going to run code through terminal on setting up a master node. We're going to be doing a bunch of math and stuff using Polygon, formerly known as Matic. So for the people who, like, there was some awesome code stuff here, but for people who want to see me, like, once again try to type and struggle doing network management and in code and backend stuff and screaming, check me out on April 10th. Otherwise, see us on this April 16th, which will be our DEF CON 201 meeting there. And check out some of our future shows, such as Archvile Linux Perspective, Master of Unlocking, which is my other show about picking locks, and some of the specials. And we're going to have a particularly special. We're trying to make one for the 20th that you, for obvious reasons, that you definitely don't want to miss. So anyhow, that's our show. Enjoy the Twitch raid for all you Twitch people out there. Otherwise, if you really like this content, you can hit that bell on YouTube, click like, share, and subscribe on Twitch, D Live, and YouTube. Hello, everyone out there on all those platforms, including our extra platforms, Facebook, especially Diode Zone, again, the decentralized FOSS Liberté, and all the awesome hackers watching this doing videos on tour. That's it for me. I'm Side Pocket. That is for this episode of Crypto Barons. Sorry, I'm Side Pocket, one of the co-founders of one of the two. I can't speak. I can't wait to have dinner. One of the two co-founders of DEF CON 201. This has been it for Crypto Barons with the actual physical blockchain. Enjoy the music, Twitch. Enjoy the raid. I hope you enjoy the show, and make sure to follow and subscribe. Keep up on updates. Hack the planet. Dirty Jersey represent. And remember, GNU Taler is apparently legal in India, and also never leave your key out in a vending machine at a European hacker conference. Enjoy. Peace. Hope you all learned. Crypto. Thank you for that last minute follow, Edson. I see you. Unfortunately, we're ending the episode, so I hope I see you the next Crypto Barons on April 10th, or see me next Sunday on April 4th. Thanks for following. We're now only 7 away from our goal to Crypto Superstar. I greatly appreciate it. Hang tight on people on Twitch. We're going to raid right now.